Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, I will tell you, we are having the most, whatever. What is it?
Ludicrous conversation.
Is it a ludicrous conversation?
Well, maybe not ludicrous.
How did we, well, we're just, it's the general topic.
Archetypes.
Archetypes. And, you know, what's the difference between an archetype and a stereotype? Because stereotypes are based on archetypes.
Yeah, I think so.
They both
I would go with that.
They both have, their roots in some reality.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. So, okay. Tom Sokolowski joining me today. Today being
morning.
June 7th. Good morning. Another gloriously beautiful day in Pittsburgh. And we are not particularly drawn to any stories in the news. Is that correct?
Oh, well, except the one that came up and connects back to my Warholian roots.
Oh, yes.
Which was on the web of sort of famous people's birthdays and famous things that happened. And today, there was an image there. At first I thought, who was that person? And then Lynn scrolled up, and it was an image of Sirhan. And those of you who are old enough remember that this was the fellow who shot and killed Bobby Kennedy low on June 7th of 1968. And what was interesting about that, I said, oh, well, that's connects up to Warhol, because around 11:30 on that day, a woman by the name of Valerie Solanas, and if you're in Pittsburgh, as most of you are, you can go and see this play called Pop, which is now being presented at the City Theater on the South Side.
Which you hated.
Which I hated, but nevertheless. But I'm going to give them a plug. Which is about this historic event when this woman who was a deranged feminist went in and shot Andy Warhol and one of his confrères. And Warhol was very seriously injured. 2 bullets went into him, and they ruptured 7 of his interior organs. They operated on him, and then he survived. But the next day when he woke up, this was like 9 or 12 hours of sleeping under anesthesia, he said, "Where are my headlines?"
Those were this is an apocryphal tale. I'll tell you
it's
that right now.
No, it's a true tale.
Who reported this?
Oh, people who were there sitting there. Warhol would say things like that.
The first words out of his mouth after almost dying, being shot.
Where are my headlines?
Where?
Well, what was it? What was Gertrude Stein's line? What is the question? I mean, when you're an artist. Anyway,
all right, so where are my headlines? And
the point was there were only 2 of them, because there were 2 at that point. New York City had 2 afternoon newspapers, the Daily News and the New York Mirror, and those had famed pop artist shot by fan, and I can't remember what the other one said. Well, the reason that was that evening of that same day, June 7th, Sirhan killed Bobby Kennedy at a public rally, political rally in Los
Angeles Hilton, I believe.
I think so. And so, of course, the point was here was someone, who was in a certain sector more famous than Warhol, and he died, namely Kennedy. And
he was killed violently. Yeah. Both men were shot. And one died, and one was more
probably famous. A larger world.
Definitely more famous. Kennedy trumped Warhol.
And the thing is, I tend to believe, although we've never found when Warhol first said this, but his what would you say, his mantra was, in the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes. And many people read that as being, woo, where's my time in the sunshine? But I always like to say, part of that mantra is the fact of you only have 15 minutes. Because in this case, had Bobby Kennedy not been killed, Warhol, who was very famous in other worlds, would have been, El País and the Globe and Mirror.
That would have been the talk of the town.
It would have been the talk of the town. But Kennedy was killed. So it sort of tells you if you're in the right place at the right time, voila, and if you're in the right place and the wrong. Like I remember when Michael Jackson died.
Yes.
Farrah Fawcett died on the same day, I think, or maybe the day before, and her death was totally wiped out because Michael Jackson was
I remember. Okay, now I've got my own personal story here. I remember. Well, I don't know if you remember. If he was, you probably, I don't know if he was, there was an old anchorman in Pittsburgh, Paul Long. No, see, it was before your time. Paul Long, for those of you who, like Tom, who don't know him, was this just curmudgeonly, bald, nothing attractive about him, a scar on his head, and he was wonderful. I think Johnny Carson once held up his picture because, they were talking about anchormen being these, and he said, look at this guy. He was smart. He was, I just adored him. And he was quite a character. He smoked cigars. He lumbered around. He was a pilot. He had been an actor. And he was smart as blazes. And he was my pal. And he wanted to take me flying in his plane. Now, this is a guy who at the time, we had our desks next to each other at the WTAE newsroom, and it was not unusual around 4 for Paul to tuck his head under his wing and just go out cold. He was always falling asleep. He even, in fact, fell asleep during a newscast once. Oh, my God. Where I know the director said, all right, ready, camera 2. Ready, camera 2. Cue Paul. Wake up, Paul! And up he came and just started immediately reading.
That's great.
Wonderful guy. So I go up with him in his plane. I decided that I would make a story of it.
Okay.
Paul Long takes me flying. So I had a photographer along who was crammed into the back, and up we went. This is the most terrifying flight of my life. I've never been so scared. I was sweating like the sweat of somebody who thinks they're going to die. Sure. And I was not afraid of flying. But as we approached, he was just flying us up to Arnold Palma Airport, Westmoreland County. As we're approaching the runway, and I'm thinking, thank God, we're about to touch down again. Because he had insisted I take the plane was going up, the plane was going down. He wouldn't help me. I said, stop it! The plane is all over the place. He's smoking a cigar and laughing. The photographer in the back is screaming for his mother. It was terrifying. So as we make the approach, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to survive this experience. I also was refusing to remember that we had to reverse course and head back. There was a return trip to be had yet. So as we're coming in, all of a sudden, this alarm on the dashboard goes off. A light starts blinking, a beeper, an alarm like, meep, 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 meep. And he pays no attention. And I said, what is that? Doesn't answer me. We're getting beep, 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 red lights flashing. So I swear it was like 20 feet off the ground. He answers me. It just says the landing gear aren't down. What? What? And then he
You're gonna go to the belly flop.
he clicks it, and he was hot dogging. He was trying to scare the hell out of us.
And succeeded.
So we touched down, and I'm ready to kill him. I am ready to kill him. And not only that, what I thought of is, and if you had succeeded in killing us, I would be just this sidebar in the, it would say, noted television anchorman Paul Long dies in plane crash. And somewhere in paragraph 7, also killed feature reporter Lynn Cullen.
So that was your headline.
So I understood.
Quick thing to that. I have a dear friend, 2 friends, both artists. And one guy is from Mississippi. Claudia I knew her first, is from New York City. And she married this guy, and they went down to Mississippi, and Claudia had just put out this really wonderful children's book that won all these awards. So they got people in the local newspapers to come and interview her. And, so they're there, and the article comes up, and it says, Ed McGowan's second wife writes book. I was thinking that, so it's very
funny. Oh, God. Oh, Lord.
Who's on top and who's on the bottom?
Man, I'll tell you. And so on the way back.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, he was, he might have been 78 years old at that time and was at a point where he probably should not have been flying. Sure. I'm sure he shouldn't have been. And we're heading back to Allegheny County Airport. I drank a lot at lunch. We had lunch at the airport. We're coming back, and he radios in, blah, 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 that he needs clearance to land. And the radar tower, whatever they call it, the tower calls back and says something about a plane at 2 o'clock. Note this plane. And so I look out the window, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Paul says, "Do you see anything?" And I said, "See anything?" I said, "I can see the pilot's nose hairs." What do you mean? He's got. What do you see anything? Jesus. God. It wasn't too long after that
he died.
He ceased to fly. No, he used to fly with his poor wife, and he would put it on automatic pilot and take a nap. And she's up there with, he was a hot dog.
It sounds like.
And he once sat down somewhere in Arizona, and she was so enraged at whatever that she got out. She said, "I'm not getting back in. That's it. Goodbye." And he took off without her. I mean, it was. He also did crash land somewhere around here, and walked up to somebody's house. Knock, knock, knock. This is when he was very famous in Pittsburgh. And a woman opened the door, and she's startled because there's Paul Long. And he says, "Madam, may I use your telephone?" But he had landed on a little street somewhere. I don't know. God,
on his roof or something.
Oh, dear God. What a wonderful character. What a great guy. Every Ash Wednesday, do you know what he would do? It was an outrage.
No,
he was an atheist to the bone. And he would ridicule religion at every opportunity.
Sounds like Maureen Dow.
Right. So at every Ash Wednesday, he wouldn't know it was until he'd see some people walking around the newsroom with, the ashes on their forehead. Take that damn huge stogie of his, slam it down in it, and he would and walk around with this big, bunch of cigars. Which I'm sure offended so many people. I mean, he didn't care.
Now, it's interesting because, I mentioned Maureen Dowd. Do you find it interesting?
I think she was a good Catholic in a way.
Well, yeah.
I don't think she's an atheist.
No. That's not what I was going to say. But don't you find it interesting that for the last month or two, every one of her columns
has been on the Catholic Church.
And that the fact of, all right, she's a columnist with a certain voice, and she doesn't represent the New York Times.
Well, she's enraged.
No, I know she is, but I'm just surprised that the Times sort of says, like, not cool it or write about something else.
Chuck says, question for Tom. I was so surprised to find out recently that Andy Warhol is buried right over the hill from me. What do you mean?
Is he speaking from the grave, Chuck?
God, that's scary.
Where you hope to be interned.
Okay, right. Jesus, Chuck. Right over the hill from me in St. John's Cemetery in Bethel Park, Castle Shannon area. I visited the grave and was further surprised to find the grave marked with a very simple stone. Mm-hmm. I expected a gravestone with a bit more fanfare. How did Warhol end up practically in my backyard?
Well, as I understand it, that is the cemetery that has a lot of Carpatho-Rusins, which was Warhol's ethnic background.
Wasn't his mother buried there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the issue was that when Warhol died, although his will suggested what should be done with his worldly goods, etc., there was nothing said about his funeral. So the family came and took the body back to Pittsburgh. And in fact, there was talk that the tombstone was going to say Andrew Warhol. And people in New York just had a fit, saying, hey, he was world-renowned, and as an adult took that name, so it says Andy Warhol. But it's interesting, they had a Carpatho-Rusin, I shouldn't say, what do they call them?
Minister?
No. It was a religious ceremony, but I'm trying to think what they're called. Byzantine Catholics, because they have allegiance to the Pope, but the ritual looks more like an Orthodox religion rather than a Catholic ritual. Anyway, so the priest had his whole sort of Eastern European thingamajig and icons and stuff. And when they brought the coffin to the grave, it was lowered down, and the priests were ululating and whatever, and incense. And someone had from New York I wasn't there, brought a huge crystal, like Baccarat crystal flagon of which was not Gerivien. It was one of these old scents, Warhol loved scent, the perfume. And they threw it into the grave, and it fell on top of the metal coffin and broke. And so all this, heavy-duty perfume went up, and people from New York applauded, I was told, and the family was just aghast because this didn't go well.
This was not holy water. I'm sure the priest
there.
was not happy either.
Yeah, I'm sure the priest wasn't happy either.
So these two worlds clashed.
So to speak, yes, exactly. Yes. But so that's the story, and that's why he's there. And it's interesting because there's a woman named Madeline something or other, I can't remember her last name, who has been making a film about Warhol's grave.
Right.
And she goes there every day, or nigh unto every day, and has put together, when I was still at the museum, we showed one version of it. But it's interesting how many people make the trek. I know at the museum we always had a sheet to tell people how to get there, and they leave pennies on the grave, they leave candles, soup cans, and all the sort of memorabilia.
Does somebody eventually come and collect that stuff and take it away? What happens?
The family pays someone, or maybe it's a foundation, I'm not really sure, to sort of keep the grave. I remember one time one of the brothers was telling me, it sounded so funny actually, that they didn't like when people left money on the grave because money is metal. And if it sat there for a while and it was rainy, it would sort of leave rusty bits on top of the granite. So.
But it's a totally common-looking headstone.
Oh, yeah, just a kind of
like any other.
Beloved brother, that kind of crap.
Right.
But it's interesting, it reminded me, I remember the one time I did something similar was, I guess it was the first time I went to Europe in the very early 70s, and Jim Morrison had just died like 6 months before, and I went to Père Lachaise in Paris, and oh my God, he had this huge tombstone and burning candles and beads. It was really quite impressive, and it was right in the middle of all of that, Vietnam and drugs, and it was really quite something. Talk about avatars and archetypes.
I don't think we ever got into archetypes.
No, we didn't.
Okay, shall we take a break?
Why not?
Indeed. And maybe we'll return. Obviously, we're just doing freeform today, which is nice.
We always do freeform.
Oh, well, that's why I like you here. You're not coming next Thursday.
Yes, I am.
Oh, I thought you said you were going to Cleveland.
No, I'm just going for the first 3 days of the week.
Oh, but you're coming back for
Lynn,
what?
would I abandon you except for the most extreme of...
He's decamping from Cleveland just to get back to us.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Okay, we'll be back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
You in the City and Hosanna House Summer Nights present Jazz Under the Stars, starring Najee, Friday, July 13th, 8 p.m. at the Sherwood Event Center in Wilkinsburg. Tickets available at Dorsey's, Stediford's, or charge by phone at 1-800-383-5760. Najee, live in concert July 13th. Proceeds benefit Hosanna House, a place called Hope.
Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
Hey, Billy, want to go to the state fair?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it. But now your parents are becoming energy efficient. They could save hundreds of dollars a year and take you to the fair next year.
I want to go now.
Oh, I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Tom was just telling me about being attacked on the Copacabana. I have never, not the Copacabana, the wait.
No, Copacabana. No, not Copacabana. That's where Lucian Desert. No, wait, or is it Copacabana? Wait,
No.
One of the beaches is Ipanema and Copacabana. Yeah, it's one of the beaches.
Oh, that's right. I have never personally, thank God,
been attacked.
No, not been the victim of a violent act. And you have? Is that the only time? Is that the only time you've been mugged?
Yeah, thank God. I'll tell you a funny story. I was once up for jury duty, and for trial. I've done grand jury, which is really fabulous, but to really actually decide for someone, I never got in. But anyway, so one time I did get in, and there were 14 of us who were in the box, and they're asking questions and what have you. And I remember, so who has been the victim of a crime?
Yeah.
Everyone puts their hands up. Who has been the victim of a crime? Everyone put their hand. Then it got down to who has been the victim of a violent crime? And then a bunch of us put our hands up.
Wow.
And then who has sustained injury? And I was one of 3 people put our hands up. Then it turns out there was someone who was in 2 people, 14 people in New York City. 2 had been involved where murder was part of the crime. It was shocking. I was just
wait, they hadn't been murdered.
No, but their partner or their friend.
Somebody was murdered.
So anyway, the 3 of us, before we got to the murder thing, was who sustained injury, and I did. So what happened? So I told the story about being mugged in Brazil. I remember the judge said, "See, it's not just New York, it's Brazil." He was this very funny judge. So then he said, well, how's your finger? I said, it still hurts. It hurts, ladies and gentlemen. He was such like a wiseacre judge.
An archetype.
An archetype.
Was he Jewish?
He was definitely Jewish.
Yeah, so
he was sort of like the male Judge Judy. So of course I wasn't picked. But that was really the frightening thing of how many. And I don't think these people were just trying to bloviate. That's one of my favorite words. Just wank it off just in order not to get jury duty. But just you live in a big city where there's violence and poverty and different kinds of.
I lived in New York City for 2 years, from like 1970 to 72.
That was really bad.
And that was a bad time to be there. I was living as a poor, student, and I took the bus, the subway, and walked everywhere. And I cannot believe nothing ever happened to me. I'd walk in dark neighborhoods for blocks and blocks at, midnight.
You came off as a tough broad.
Tough broad. I was
don't
like
screw
20,
with the tough broad.
No, I was this 20-year-old.
No, but certain people on the streets look. Not necessarily about like some
Well, that's true. Some people.
But some people look, vulnerable and whatever. And if you just look like you were, I was telling the story that I got attacked by this bunch of kids. This was in Brazil when poverty level was really bad, and it was very much like that. What was that store? Oliver, the
Clockwork Orange.
No, Oliver. What was it called? the
Oliver
musical,
Twist? Yeah, Oliver.
and how they Fagin, wasn't that the name of the bad guy? He would send these kids out and they'd bring back money and then he'd give them food. Well, the same thing happens today in Brazil. It's all not as bad. I remember this bunch of kids just whomp, and took $5 or something. But I remember another time we were in that same trip, I think before I got attacked, in the middle of the daytime in the major square, piazza in Rio, this older woman, but very nicely dressed, so obviously she had a few bucks, and this bunch of kids just like from nowhere descended on her, like threw her down, and they were off. It was really... There's a great movie called, and it came up just around that, called Pixote, Pixote, and it's just about this.
Those little kids?
Oh, it was amazing. And then it was interesting because the kid who was from the ghetto, from the favela, who played this Pixote, who won all these awards, first-time actor, blah, blah, blah. He did that, went back to the favela, and then was killed. It's an amazing movie.
The actor was killed.
Yeah, this kid who was maybe 10.
Oh. My God.
Angelical face, and he goes through with drag queens. But it's a great movie. If you ever get a chance, it's a really gut-wrenching film. Wow.
Are we ever going to get to archetypes? I can't even remember how it came up when we were talking.
Oh, archetype, stereotype.
Well, I said, are they? We decided they're pretty much the same, right?
Yeah, we need a dictionary to tell us specifically.
Okay, but stereotype and archetype pretty much the same. Some grounding in fact. Oh, we were talking about, I was doing some sort of gay stereotype.
Oh, right, that's right. Yes,
right. I forgot about the
decorating. You made the point of, you and Jess said that.
Oh, I said
70% of all good-looking men are gay.
Right.
And I sort of counted that.
Jess said 70. I said almost all of the.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, when you're a single woman, and invariably, you meet finally somebody who's, you have some interest. Well, they're gay. They're always gay. You've got the Mona Lisa as a screensaver.
What would you like? Tiny Tim.
No, that's
fine. But I'm gay, so I should have Tiny Tim.
Okay, right? so we were talking about, are gay men really better looking?
And I said, it because many gay men, or this relatively new term, metrosexual, are very concerned about...
heterosexual men are now, too.
Well, that's what I'm saying, the metrosexual, right. Meaning that you're very concerned with decor, hygiene, whatever. So even though you may not be the structurally most beautiful person in the world, you have facials, you go to tanning booths, and you have creams for your skin, and you have hair weaves and nose jobs and whatever. Or, and one can't say that, all gay people are born with a limp wrist and a good complexion,
No,
no, of course not.
Right.
So it's really about dressing well. I mean, if you say, I want to go out in the street and look really spiffy, as opposed to wearing a sweaty old undershirt that you haven't washed in 6 years, as some heterosexuals are wont to do on the weekend, as divorced daddies who take their children to the science center.
Don't you ever wear a crumpled...
Not that I haven't washed in 6 years. No.
Okay, so
the shirt with the sleeves cut off.
No, but I think there's I don't know. Jess and I think it's something else. It's something more than that. And I also think, what were we talking about where I said, well, of course, because gay men would produce something more beautiful. Well, I mean, people talk about it, and I think it's certainly true. I mean, if you look at the biggest stereotypes, you find, women who want to look more masculine, who are lesbians, and men who want to take on the accoutrements of women, such as being interested in hair and beauty and fashion and whatever. It's sort of playing against traditional type. Okay.
I think that less and less as that's happening now is, people are out of the closet and can marry and blah, blah, blah. But there's just a certain aspect of it. And I think part of it has to do with, very often, I don't know if many of you or many of your listeners have seen, The Naked Civil Servant about Quentin Crisp. Oh, it really, I highly recommend, which was...
Okay, tell everyone who Quentin
Crisp was... a gay man, and came to the fore when he was in his, I I guess, 70s. And his book that he wrote was called The Naked Civil Servant because he had a civil service job. He worked as a artist model, a nude model, which he did for
This is in
Britain.
In England.
Sort of in the late 40s through the 60s.
Right.
And as he got older, he was a nice-looking guy. But then as he got older and was beginning to lose his sort of Cupid doll kind of looks, then he started, dyeing his hair. And I think he had a facelift, and then he would wear makeup. So by the end of it, he really looked like a sort of grotesque, silly old queen with hair like, how women, when they do blue rinse and the hair turns purple.
Yeah.
But then he would walk down the street with these hats like Queen Elizabeth. But he would always do it proudly, and he was beat up during his life. But I forgot the point I was trying to make.
Me too. Where were we? We were on
We're talking about people.
The naked.
Yeah, but now why did I bring that up?
I don't know. It'll come to us.
Well, I was saying the fact of he took nattiness and being dressed well, whatever, to the absolute extreme, very much like women who have facelifts to make themselves look 17 when they're 70, as opposed to having nature take its course as it does, and looking good, but looking what your age is, not trying to look like a Twinkie. And I remember he sort of left England and then was taken up by America. I mean, Hollywood. I remember he was on Jack Paar and all that. And actually, I met him. He was in New York, and I met him at a couple of parties. And he was pleasant, but he very much felt like he was a member of the royal family, and he would pontificate and would appear in these chiffon suits at the age of 80 or something. I mean, he was quite something.
Do you think he was all there, so to speak? No.
Well, no, I think what I was maybe going to say was the point of the movie, and then, meeting him briefly, was that I think he was who he was, and he was going to carry it with pride. And there was this one line from the book, like, I walk down the street, and I am who I am, and I let nothing sort of get in my way. And even when he was roughed up, he'd get up and fix his hat and then continue walking. And there was
there's something courageous about it.
Yeah, that's right. That was the whole point, that he was courageous. He was who he was, and if you didn't like it, or you felt he was foolish, or, silly old ponce, as the English might say.
Or if he was simply somebody who had a definite need to be looked at.
Well, there was definitely that. I think still certainly he was a performer.
Yeah.
And, and he wasn't a fool. He knew he didn't look like Troy Donahue or someone of that nature. But he stood out, and he wanted to stand out. And I guess he figured in a certain way, and Warhol was this way too, because when Warhol first went to New York, he didn't have the savoir-faire. He was this weird kid from Pittsburgh. And there were some horrible things written about him, because at that point, many people, gay men, in the art world were very much in the closet, and they wanted to pass. And here Warhol would come with these outrageous outfits, carrying his stuff in a paper bag and having his twangy Pittsburgh accent, and they wrote all these horrible things about him. So then he just decided, well, if you're going to treat me that way, I'm going to make the most of it. And he would go to events, and he'd bring with him like extremely handsome young men or all of the top drag queens, and the parties would just, like the Red Sea, split, and Andy and his entourage. So he made, lemonade out of lemons.
And when did the people who...
when
did they finally come on board?
Well, when I think critics saw that his art products, which were genius, and which were the what's the word? The hope of the future, then they had to turn around, because that was where the cash cow was.
What do you think about Donald Trump suing Miss Pennsylvania?
Oh, no, I only saw the headlines. I didn't read the paper yet. Well, what was the deal?
Well, now her thing, and this figures in. This is what made me think of it. Because initially, apparently, she was really put off that in the Canadian Miss Universe pageant, which is the same thing, and Trump owned, a woman who had been born a man wanted to enter. She was a transsexual, right?
Oh, I just read. I guess so. Yeah.
Yes. And there was a hue and cry, but I guess the Donald finally decided No, she's got all the accoutrements of a woman now. She doesn't have the accoutrements of a man. She is a woman. She's living her life as a woman. What papers say, she's a female. So yes, she can. And apparently Miss Pennsylvania really was freaked by that. Said nobody who was born a man should be able to compete in the Miss. And I mean, I'm thinking that is a debatable point. I think. I'm not sure.
If it's about beauty, I mean...
I think the woman born as a man might have an advantage, actually. Because there's nothing more beautiful than a man in drag who pulls it off. Don't you think the most beautiful... But they do. And I think because our idea of feminine beauty now has to do with long legs.
Well, think RuPaul.
RuPaul.
Who looks fabulous.
Yes, exactly. And, maybe thinner hips.
But, part of it, but no, this goes really to the heart of our archetype discussion. It's that maybe, the structural things, but it's also, to be a really good drag queen, you have to understand femininity, not being a woman, but femininity.
You have to walk like a woman.
Exactly, and if you're an actor, then you could be more woman than a woman is. But also, but I thought the coup de grace was that she was told.
She is, by the way.
Oh, that's right. She was told by someone that the judges...
This was later. So when she originally said, I'm out of here, it's because I'm not taking part in this when, you can have men competing against me.
No trannies in my dressing room.
Then she goes on Facebook and says that she had been told by another contestant that the contestant had seen this list of the 5 finalists before the contest, and in fact told Miss Pennsylvania, here's who the 5 finalists are going to be. After they'd chosen the 16, I guess she whispered to her.
And voila.
Hey, here's who it's going to be, blah, blah, blah. And indeed, it was those 5. Now, if she's telling the truth about that, I don't know why she would.
That's pretty weird.
So she said it was a
put-up job.
A put-up job. It was, and that's why Trump now is going to sue her for defamation of his fine business.
And why would he think? I mean, here's a man.
What do you mean why? Because he loves attention.
No, I know that, but I mean, a man who's made fortune in real estate and done reasonably well would take on beauty pageant, but he likes attention.
He likes attention, and he likes beautiful women.
Stupid television show.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And he likes beautiful women. So this allows him to be around beautiful women and be, in charge. So
large and in charge.
And somebody accused her of transphobia. I never heard that term. Have you heard that?
Like he was going to attach the suffix phobia to anything.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's like,
and I don't blame people for somebody like Miss Pennsylvania. She comes from Cranberry. She's probably a right-wing conservative, Republican, Christian, who knows what else.
With a rosary around her ankle.
Exactly. But you don't even have to be that to still have trouble catching up to.
Right. I suppose. Well, it's like the other thing was comparable to this, although. This may have more of a twick than the beauty pageant one, whereas this business of women athletes in the Olympics and other kind of competitive athletics, saying that even if someone is transgendered, if they were born male, they have certain strength capabilities just based on biology. And certain musculature, whatever.
Well, there was that one woman who was in South Africa who was...
Yeah, South Africa, right.
And I think she finally was allowed to...
She was allowed, but still there's a lot of...
I understand it. This whole thing brings up all kinds of issues of fairness. It's true.
But then it's funny because, there's transgender is one thing, but remember the same thing was for that guy, and he was definitely South African, who was born... without his lower
legs.
So he runs, he has...
Pastorius, his name is.
That's right. And he normally wears just the kind of...
He's trying to get into the Olympics,
well,
but you know what?
But he runs on these sort of metal flanges.
Yes, he's allowed to compete, but he has to reach a certain threshold in an international contest to be eligible for the Olympics, and he has
not
thus far failed.
Oh,
he has a few other races.
Because
but
some people have said these metal flanges
that they in
give him
fact
bounce.
do give him
yeah.
a kind of bounce that he otherwise wouldn't have. Who the heck knows?
Well, it's funny because on one level you say, "Oh, what an extraordinary success story."
Yes.
And God love him for being with that kind
Isn't
of
that
affliction.
something? Yeah.
But then you say, "Well, we're all supposed to be equal," but then they're all taking drugs anyway, so steroids and whatever else.
So,
isn't it terrible? I mean, I hate sports, but when it used to be sort of, wow, although I suppose maybe people did all these sort of wacko things all the time.
Well, they didn't have available.
Well, also there wasn't the money.
There wasn't the money,
you won a plaque and big deal,
Right.
but now you win millions of dollars and you're on, Mary Lou Retton.
There was a
what is it, Cheerios or Wheaties or one of those silly cereals.
There was a piece in, I think, the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times a few days ago. I mentioned it on the air about implants, neural implants that are going to allow paralyzed people to move.
Oh, wow.
That will and how they will initially be used for that kind of thing. But if a person can, and they were saying, we're going to end up with some people who have the money and the wherewithal to enhance not only their mental capabilities through a neural implant, but also, so the steroid issues of professional athletics today will give way to
something even more complex.
Exactly, to sort of a bionic kind of if somebody has and they're saying it's really right around the corner. Right around the corner.
Well, then the interesting thing, it's not exactly what I thought you were going to say, but you take that, and I guess I would counter it. That's probably not the right word, but by saying, even with that bionic sense, you probably still have to have the gumption to do it. Like if they just gave me a shot, I don't think I would start running.
No, that's true. But if it gives you, it gives you an edge. That's it.
Gumption,
that's it.
Trained, and the other one just can go faster.
That's what steroids have done too.
Well, of course, yeah.
So we're going to have to rethink what sport is, and
Well, think about it. It used to be two things. There was first the Greek, kalos kagathos, which means to be good-looking in appearance and to be well thought of. So that, in other words, when you see these statues, nude statues of Greek sculpture, which were never what any of the Greeks looked like, because the people who were aristocrats and did gymnastics and whatever in the gymnasia, they had long hair and they wore long leggings and whatever. They didn't look like those statues, but those statues are symbolic of the pure beauty, because unless you had good thoughts and noble ideas, you couldn't have a perfect body because they went together. And then that got sort of slightly twisted by the Romans, who were always more crude. And their things was mens sana and corpore sano, a sound mind and a sound body. And that's, of course, what it says in all of our gymnasia nowadays. But that it's a package. You should take care of your body just as you take care of your brain.
Well, it's the ideal.
Right, it's the ideal. And what's interesting is, when you look at those statues, I remember one kid questioning me when I was speaking of Greek stature. He said, "Oh, but they all have small penises." And I said, "Aha! A small penis was a sign of gentility or whatever, and it was only the satyrs and the centaurs
that had a large
who were bestial and hairy and nasty. Because to be just sexually grounded without all the other things was not something that was praised. So it's interesting in our societies how things change.
Speaking of penises.
Yes!
You...
Have you been lurking in my nether regions?
No, but you told
Yes.
Jess and I during a break that Jamie Lee Curtis was born.
Oh, yes, right.
With male and female
Right, she
genitalia.
told the story. I remember once on Johnny Carson or something, because many people had often commented that she looks very much like a young boy, even today when she's got to be my age. Well, maybe a little younger, but anyway. And she told the story that she was one of those children, which are not, they're much more common than we think, who are born with both genitalia. And that sometimes, I think years ago, the doctors would just decide, and they'd either, snip off the penis or sew sew up the vagina and just say, oh, this will be a boy or this will be a girl. But obviously, whatever hormonal things are there are there. And if you really need them, maybe that child needs to go through a whole course of, more testosterone if they've chosen to make that child a boy or vice versa. And she talked about that, so it's very interesting.
Well, she does have.
Yeah, she's when she was younger, she really, the boy on her face.
She looks,
and she always had that except for one
very
movie,
short hair, right? Yeah. And just a delightful person. So she,
that's what people have said. Yeah, I've never met her.
She had a long Pittsburgh connection, and I forget.
She used to come. That's right
for this child that she sort of.
Yeah, and she used to come from, I think it was Children's Hospital, and someone once told the story. She came the first year and they raised lots of money. The second year, she was standing there, and I guess the auction or whatever the hell it was wasn't going as well as she wanted or as the hospital wanted. So she said, "All right, now, everyone who has given so much, come down into the center circle." And then, all right, now, those of you who've given, you can come to the circle too. Now, what about the rest of you? And I want you and you and you.
She got really.
Oh, and they got tons of money, but a lot of people were.
Because she shamed people.
She shamed people, yeah. But I always remember that the morning after, I was like, don't bring her again.
Really, people were appalled.
Right, because it was very sort of aggressive New York.
She shook them down. That's fine.
That's what it's about.
What are they there for?
Exactly.
Do you know, I have had to be a celebrity auctioneer at a number. Yes, right, at a number of events, and it's just unbelievable.
All right.
How you stand there like a fool saying, opening bid of this and that, and nobody.
Well, I must admit, when I've done
and you think, well, what did you come for? Don't you know that's what this is about?
Well, I remember when I've done it a few times, especially the longer I was in Pittsburgh, I would say, "Lynn Cullen, you cheap bitch, vote on this."
That's how I ended up with my Warhol.
Oh, really? Because you told me that's what
I was doing.
Time, yeah.
I was the auctioneer. No one would bid.
Yeah.
It was too high an opening bid.
Right.
And then I said, I don't even know if this is kosher. All right, you guys, I'll get it started. And I bid. And no one else ever bid. That was it. And God. Oh,
what do we do for charity?
Yeah, right. Honest to Pete. Okay, we got to take a second break. And we will return.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Pittsburgh City Paper's Health Issue is available now. Pick up one today for Girl Talk, Bruce Hornsby, the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, and News of the Weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Gustavo and Vella wants to thank all of southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vella usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvella@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the City Theater, Symphony, History Museum, and the Carnegie Museums. Check out this week's big deal featuring 50% off tickets to the Carnegie Science Center. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's only online deal site where the deals don't expire. bergbargains.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Oh, I see.
Hadn't done anything illegal.
No, right. Just
right.
And enough people obviously agree with him.
Exactly. Sorry, we're just quick talk about Wisconsin.
The home of cheese.
Yes, the home of cheese.
Do you have a cheese hat somewhere in your...
Of course I do.
She looked at me, that was sort of a rancid. Of course I have a cheese hat.
You want me to bring it in?
Oh, do. Yes, because they can see it.
Well, mine is...
Swiss?
It was out in the garage for a long... It is filthy. There's, I think, mold growing on it.
Well, then it's very appropriate. So you come in looking like a ripe slice of camembert.
And, I have such a skinny little head that when I put it on, it's sort of, it's waggling all over the place. It's not comfortable. I wouldn't wear it.
Well, I hope not.
I mean, you look like...
Well, we can talk about this for the last few minutes. Did you watch at all, listen at all, the Diamond Jubilee of our Queen?
I
Since we're talking about queens today.
I looked a bit. I watched for maybe 5 minutes the day that they were standing out in the freezing
flotilla?
rain, right? And he got sick.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right. Although I noted that day that he looked, for a guy who's turning 91 Saturday.
I thought 96.
No.
91, okay.
Doesn't he look amazing?
Oh, well, I always think he always looks, what do you call it? When you embalm someone, he looks sort of embalmed.
Oh, you think?
I think so.
Well, but he is.
He's very
well preserved. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And he's straight as an arrow.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just his stature, his military bearing, all that kind of stuff. And she's just turned into this sort of like dumpling, like her mom.
Yeah, really, right.
And
my favorite part was, although he had said this before for something, I can't remember what the event was, when Prince Charles introduced her at the concert that they had.
Mummy.
And I was like, oh, please, I know it's Britishism, but really.
It just sounds weird when an old man like
what's
Charles
he,
calls
60 or
him
something?
Mummy. Well, he's
he's older than I am. No, he must have to be like 63
Mummy.
or something.
But that's what they call
I really hope she has the balls, since we're talking about transgender things, to sort of say, now, in 5 years,
she won't.
And give it to the...
No, she wouldn't consider that balls.
How do you know that?
She considered that a dereliction of duty. Her whole thing is she serves till death. It's like... That's what the deal is.
But what if she starts?
You don't
fading?
abdicate so your son can.
No. That was not what I was going to say. I said if it became a case, she became really so.
Addled?
Addled.
Well, then
not addled. I mean, just physically. What I was about to say was, because she can do this, jump a generation and say, I think it should be youth. I think Prince William should be king. She can do that.
She could, but this Charles is... His
but
dad didn't like him. She was a cold mother. Now you're going to take
and
his
he has
one
that
shot
horrible,
at
crude
He
Cabela.
can't. I know, but
and he talks to vegetables.
What is the whole idea behind these royals is tradition. Right?
I know, but the great ones are the ones who make statements against. I mean, even if in his own
Henry
foppish
VIII?
way. No, not like Henry VIII.
Well, he did. What?
Well, he did.
So who made statements against it? Like that disgusting...
The Catholic Church.
that horrible... the one that made Elizabeth in line to be the queen.
Oh, Edward VII. Or Edward VIII, seventh, I think.
Who talked about... I mean, man...
The Duke of
I really think... He was gay, and Wallace Simpson was gay too.
Well, there's this book that.
No, she's
out.
more of a man than he.
Oh yeah, there's a very interesting book that came out recently. I bought it. I haven't had a chance to read through it, but I read the reviews called "Full Service." And it's about a guy who in Los Angeles
I've read about
owned a gas station.
Right,
they used to say full service, meaning they wash your car and do whatever.
Right.
But here it's a dude for everyone, for like Desi Arnaz, and he talks about threesomes with the Duke of Windsor. But there, even though he was sort of loony, he wanted to marry Wallace Simpson, and he said, screw the monarchy.
Well, because but that was not admirable in that he was not willing to live up to his responsibilities.
But I guess he felt there was someone else who could.
He was a total party-going narcissist.
Well, that's true, too.
He was not. There was nothing that is redeemable in that guy.
Well, all right, that's true.
And on top of it, he was a fascist. I mean, he was.
That's absolutely
he was
true.
in every way reprehensible.
Right. Well, it's interesting, and also the word was that
he did the world a favor, actually.
Well, had he been, who knows what position he would have taken as King of England in the Second World War.
That's right.
But the other thing was supposedly, I shouldn't say supposedly, I mean, it was fact, that the Queen Mother hated the Duke and Duchess of Windsor because she felt that her husband, George VI, was never raised, because he was second son, to be king. So he stammered. It's the King's Speech, if you ever saw that great movie, and that his constitution, and that he died young.
It killed him, yeah.
Because it was the war
so
and whatever, and so she was made a widow at a fairly young age. And because Elizabeth was 21, was it, when she was?
She was very young, and so that's why she's been there for as long as 60? Is that what we were celebrating?
Yeah, 60th on this round. Because I didn't know when she will one up Queen Victoria.
3 years.
Oh, just 3 years? And then she'll be longer? Or
the longest serving monarch.
I always remember that play, The Great Line, about Queen Victoria. And she tells a story as she's coming. I think it was Helen Hayes playing her. And she comes in after the whole day of her jubilee. And she says, "Oh, the best thing that happened was I was going in my golden coach. And some cockney was standing there. And as the coach stopped, he said, 'Good on you, girl. You've done a good job.'" And she said, "That was the most wonderful thing, you know."
I can't imagine Victoria saying such a thing.
Well, she was a real interesting character.
I know, but I don't...
Lunatic, partly. I mean, the fact that she so loved...
Albert.
Well, he sounds like a total Nazi. Everything one hears about him, he was dreadful. But she would lay out his dress clothes every night, and she wore black, I think, was it for the rest of her life after he died, and had, 40 volumes of diaries, and she was not inarticulate at all. When you read, this diaries just started coming out, and different things that she did. Like, she was the first one, I think, to give the vote to a number of the British colonies in Africa. I mean, there's some really smart things. And the fact that you think particularly, even more than Queen Elizabeth, going from like Victorian, Edwardian, that was a time when such incredible changes were happening in the Industrial Revolution.
That's right.
It would change the way the world was looking at it.
And she was also the monarch at a time when the British Empire was at its peak.
And the empire, the sun will never set on the empire.
Yes, right. I mean, that was when England was, England.
Yes.
Ah, geez.
Shall we start singing rules, since we always sing Rule Britannia?
Britannia rules the waves. Right. Tom. All right, so you're not following the Sandusky trial, are you?
Well, they picked the full jury.
Isn't that amazing? Within like 2 seconds.
I thought it was so interesting. I just glanced.
All these people are, you can't do a Center County juror.
No. Well, I thought yesterday, what I was very interesting, the judge said, simply knowing him, as a guy who bought his newspaper, the same kiosk you did, does not remove you.
Or working at Penn State.
Or working at Penn State, yeah.
Or being, there's, Potter and I were talking, there's a kid who's been put on this jury. He's going to be a senior at Penn State.
Oh, I saw that, right.
Listen, and he works or something, has a part-time job or something in the athletic center where one of these rapes occurs. And he played on some kind of all-star team where his coach was a potential witness. There's so many.
That sounds pretty.
And he's a student there. So, what are the pressures? I don't know. It's interesting that this jury seems to be made up of very young people and older people, and no one in between. But when I read the one yesterday before they picked the final three or whatever it was, how close they all were, either working for the university. One, I think, was the trustee of the university. One of the, I think, maybe there's a number of professors,
right.
Retired and current. Right. There's a doctor or a wife of a doctor who served in the same practice as the father of the major witness, McQuarrie. It's a small town.
Yeah. And everyone is going to have a very vested interest. But I really believe in most cases, like when I did.
I think a juror.
People are pretty good about that.
I think so too.
And to sort of say what
it's very. You can't even sit on the potential jury panel without realizing how important this is, and what incredible responsibility.
Well, the other thing that I found very interesting from that one funny case I told you about with the broken finger, my finger, but that time and then one of the grand jury times, what's very interesting is I remember the judge telling us, I will tell you not how to vote, but what the counts are that you are voting upon, because you may think such and such and such and such, but that may not be the point of law that is in contestation.
Right.
And that I thought was very interesting, because I remember a few times when I had grand jury, someone would say like, oh, and you'd go and the bailiff would say to one of the lawyers, and they'd say, oh, well, that's not pertinent. You may think it's pertinent, but that is not a point of the law.
Right.
So you were voting on, was he there or wasn't there?
Well, it's like the Edwards trial. This has nothing to do with whether or not this guy is a total
sleazeball,
jerk. Yeah. Right. Nothing. And that jury apparently did the job right.
Well, except that they didn't. Wasn't it a hung jury for 5 of the?
Well,
6
they couldn't.
counts?
Yeah, there was no way they agreed. And the hung jury, my understanding was mostly for acquittal in every case.
Really?
But,
wow.
Yeah, because no.
He just seems like such a scuzzball.
Yeah, but the government, the feds, did not prove the case. They
properly.
didn't. And these guys were able. These simple people were able to sort things through, do their job.
Well, that's
and
it.
They
really
wrestled with it.
And really, the point is, it's to clear your mind of all the sort of mishigas and just listen to the facts.
Right.
And, of course, you have to bring who you are and your experience. There's no way you can wipe that clean. But, just listen to what they're saying.
All right, Chris writes, and then we got to get out of here. I'm
Service.
reading Full Service now. Wow, what a book. I found it interesting in that the romance between Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy was a complete farce, according to this book.
Yeah.
Kate was a lesbian all of her life, and Spencer was married with 2 kids but also liked men. So the studio set up the fake romance between Kate and Spencer because they didn't want the public to know about Hepburn. The secret of Spencer Tracy was closely guarded. His wife didn't even know. But the two of them went with that romance till the day they both died. This book is full of Hollywood secrets with very graphic descriptions. Yeah, but are you willing to, so you completely accept this guy's account?
I don't think it's a book Oprah's going to pick for her as she reopens her book club.
No.
Oh, because you're talking about, what about Oprah and what's her name? The girlfriend? Kate? No, what's the girlfriend's name?
Her friend?
Yeah. Gail, who's
Gail
now
King.
on, who's now on the Omni channel or whatever the hell it's called.
So you think Oprah and she are
that's
lovers?
I have no idea, but that's what's been said for years. Because what's the man's name? Houston or something? Stedman.
Yeah.
Stedman, who they supposedly live together, but if you like it, put a ring on it, as that popular song says. If you like it, put a ring on it.
Why everybody's so damn judgmental? What if Oprah and Gail really are close, loving friends?
I didn't say they were.
I don't know.
I don't
what
know
if they
either.
do a threesome? What if
and
they
Oprah's
this
getting
and that?
fat again. Well, so we started with that. And there was a picture of her because about redoing her book thing. So everyone.
Well, when she's under stress, she gains weight, and her network is going down the tubes.
Yeah, right.
And so
Except I think she has enough money to buy.
But that doesn't matter. She's
I know,
a driven
she's
person.
a driven person. Yeah, no,
and
you're
she
right.
does not. She is not used to failure.
Right, exactly.
So this must be very hard for her.
Well, what's interesting about it is what it tells you, and this is interesting about so many of these kinds of things. For all of her business acumen, which is substantial, the things where she really succeeded were really spun on her personality.
That's right. And if you
not
remove her,
exactly,
not on her business acumen necessarily, but if you
but what's interesting about that, I'll now what's the word? Contradict myself. They just said now that in this last year, when she's been off, or 6 months, whatever it's been, that Ellen DeGeneres and someone else. Was it even Anderson? No, it wasn't Anderson Cooper. It was someone like that. Both have higher daily ratings than she did in the last 4 or 5 years of her her talk show.
Yeah, Ellen definitely is, I think. And she's wonderful. It's coming up. Anyway, okay. Hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, guys.
We shed tears.
No, I will be shedding tears because I have a funeral.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And I feel like I have to be there. So, Monday, okay?
Monday.
Can't trust that day?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember. Who was the band?
Isn't that the Mamas and the Papas?
From one fat woman to another.
All right, we're out of here.
You know how Mama Cass died?
Yeah, she choked on her own
ham
vomit.
and cheese sandwich.
Well, yeah, but okay. Well, isn't that a fitting way for her to have gone?
I know. She was always this. Ooh.
Oh, God.
Mama Cass.
Da 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 da. Mama Cass. What is that song?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. All right. We're out of here. It's about two addled people.
Yes.
Goodbye. That's us. That's the show. And what was his name? Out. And what was I saying?
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.